Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Guru Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namaste. Team Param Vedanta extends a warm welcome for the 14th session of Panchadashi. We continue our study of Chapter 1, Tattva Viveka. In today's session, we cover verses 53 to 56, and we have with us Srimati Apeksha, Dr. Sanjay Benakal, Dr. Sachin Chavre, and Dr. Ashwini Divakar explaining today's verses. Dr. Sundar will be moderating today's session, wherein he will introduce us to the topic and provide us deeper insights, facilitating manana after Sravana of these verses. Today's teaching quiz is being conducted by Dr. Divakar, ably supported by Dr. Ashwini Divakar. Before we begin today's verses, as always, let us recap the verses studied in the previous week, which will be presented by Dr. Ashwini Divakar. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. So the final negation is from the verse 49 to 52, where we unwrap the causal body to reveal the infinite bliss. Now, according to the school of Indian philosophy, there are 6 theistic schools which accept the authority of the Vedas. They are Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Purva, and Uttaramimamsa. In the 49th verse, a question is posed by Nyaya, who poses an objection in the Mahavakya Tattvam Asi. Now, the doubt is, by the Tattvamasi Mahavakya, the Parabrahman was indicated as Sachidananda. If this Brahman is Savikalpa, that is with attributes, or Nirvikalpa, without attributes. Now, here the person who is asking the doubt is attempting to negate Brahman. If it refers to the Savikalpa Brahman with its modification, these modifications by their definition will keep changing. And that which is constantly changing cannot be indicated as a permanent thing. It therefore seems unlikely that the Mahavakya can be referring to the Savikalpa Brahman. On the other hand, if we say that the Mahavakya is referring to Nirvikalpa Brahman, that which is not associated with any modifications, then such a Brahman cannot be perceived or conceived because there is no frame of reference. It cannot become the object of knowledge or the point of investigation. From the objection raised here by the Purva Pakshi, we can deduce that he falls into the Vitanda category of debaters trying to tear down the Vedantin view. Initially, he agrees with the Vedantin, saying if the Brahman that a Vedantin is considering is with attributes, that is with Savikalpa, then it must be an object of some kind. And therefore, it becomes unreal, that is avastuta. But he also says he knows that Vedantin holds Brahman to be attributeless, nirvikalpasya. And if he really is attributeless, then how are we indicating it through a Mahavakya, where the Tattvamasi sentence, which is merely words, and how can words point to the thing which is attributeless? Now, with this twist in logic, Purva Pakshi tries to ridicule the Mahavakya. Now, let us see how this is answered in verse number 50. Next slide, please. Vikalpo nirvikalpasya savikalpasya va bhavet adhye vyahatir na yatra navastatma shrayadaya. Simple commentary given by Swamiji for this shloka is, mind cannot grasp infinite and attributeless. That is Nirvikalpa. To bring Nirvikalpa into argument of comparison, one has turned Nirvikalpa into Savikalpa. Hence, it's a contradictory statement. Also, for mind to ask about infinite, it has to reduce it to capacity of its own. Finite logical caliber. So, is this shloka talking about infinite or finite? Now, let us understand this in very simple terms. Now, I have put 4 points here. The first one is, it's a flawed argument. It's a cunning doubt kind of a thing. Now, the phrase Tattvamasi point to Nirvikalpa Brahman. the ultimate reality which is attributeless and changeless. If the phrase is made of words and ideas of which are savikalpa, that is with full of attributes and modifications, it's like this: how can a dirty finger point to a perfectly clean object without making it dirty? Now, the critic claims the teaching tool, that is the words, contradicts the thing that it's trying to teach, that is the attributeless reality. Now, second point is question does not make any sense. The Vyahati dosha, it's a logical fallacy. It's trick of faulty reasoning called Vyahati dosha. The classic example is someone saying, I do not have tongue. It's absurd because to even say these words, you must have a tongue. Hence, argument destroys itself. Now, then the third point is the problem with the definition, the anavasta dosha, mixing up definitions which creates fallacy of mutual dependence. Now, this fallacy of mutual dependence can be explained, or it is explained by everybody by a soccer analogy. There are four fallacies. The first one is self dependence. It's a lonely player. What is it? You are trying to prove something using only itself as a proof. In the soccer analogy, like you can actually you can imagine there's only one player in the field. He tries to prove he is good by kicking the ball from his right to left foot and back again. Now, what is the problem here? He is not really playing with anyone. He is just moving the ball around by himself. It does not prove he can play the real game. It's pointless. It's a closed loop. So, this further, if you take an example, there is a book, and I say this book is true because it says so. There is one book called It's a True. So, what is the proof for it? The book says it's the true. The book is the only proof for itself. And here, the second thing is mutual dependence. It's a 2% trap. It's like one person, there'll be two people. One is trust and one is honesty. Telling that, they tell each other, I trust you because you're honest. But who knows this? There is no other extra proof. It's a mutual dependence. And then the third point is circular logic, the triangle of no answer. The argument keeps circling out without any external evidence. And the fourth one is infinite regression, it never ending game. It's like who was the first one to take birth. So the final point here that the Swamy Vidyaranya wants to make is Brahman is beyond all this. Vedanta says that trying to use your normal or logical mind, which works with thoughts and words, to define the ultimate limitless reality Brahman, will always fall into one of these four traps. Your mind is like the players in the broken soccer games. It can only operate by relating one limited thing to the another. So the truth of who you are is the silent, aware space in which the entire soccer game of your thoughts is happening. You are not one of the players, you are the field itself, which doesn't need any players to prove that it exists. This is further elaborated in the verse 51. The next slide, please. Idam gunakriya jati sambandha vastushu samam tena swarupasya sarvam etat itishyatam. Now let me try and explain this with an example. Imagine you're trying to describe a perfectly clear empty space in a room. The empty space is Brahman, that is the ultimate limitless reality. Now, a clever person comes and tries to describe this empty space by talking about the things in the space. Now, you can see an image there. What will be the first thing which comes to your mind to describe the quality, attribute? Like you're saying space is blue. Is it blue? It's not blue. It is only taking the color of the walls. Second thing, by the action, like, a person is running or space is running. The space doesn't run. There is a person who is running through the space. The third one is by category. There is a furniture, there is a chair, there is something else. So would you say space is furniture? You wouldn't say. There is a chair in the space. Then something to, object located in space. Like there is a lamp. So does lamp become the space? No, it does not. Isn't it? It's just an object located in the space. And the last one is the relationship, like, space is on top of the table. There is a relationship between two objects in the space, but they're all wrong. They are mistaking a temporary limited thing for the fundamental limitless space. And that, this means, what does this mean of you and Brahman? See, the exact logical errors we make when trying to describe empty space are the errors we make when trying to describe Brahman. Your mind is trained to understand the world through attributes, actions, types, objects, and relationships. But Brahman is the empty space of consciousness in which all these things appear. It is not any of them. Now, the final understanding is that you, as the conscious self, are that empty space or Brahman. You're not your attributes, whether you're old or young, your actions, whether you're walking, sitting, your type, man or woman, your body, the object, or your relationship, whether your father, mother, spouse, or anything. You are aware, limitless space in which all of these temporary roles and things come and go. We shall see the conclusion from these discussions in the verse 52, the last one. Whether vikalpas exist or not, the self which is reality is untouched by them. Thus, all the discussions of falsity of properties, the Mahavakya itself as an indicator of the reality, the relationship of Brahman and the world as Nimitta and Upadana Karana, all are superimpositions only. The self is untouched by doubts about the presence or absence of associates, connotations, and other adventitious relationships because they are superimposed on it phenomenally. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् Om. Thank you, Ashwini madam. That was a difficult topic which was recapped. So we will quickly go through the sections that we have studied so far, a kind of a quick revision. So we have seen that Swamy Vidyaranya spaced 1500 verses over 15 chapters in 3 shatakams, and each of them have got a particular term, like the Pratama Panchaka has got the term Viveka in all the chapters. And the text that we are studying now is the first of the Pratama Panchaka, which goes by the name Tattva Viveka Prakarana. So this is the categorization done by Pujya Swami Paramarthananda ji. We have covered the introduction in the first 2 verses, and the 3rd to 10th presented the most important part of this text, perhaps in the form of Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam. And the 3rd section, 11 to 30, covered the cause of samsara. And we are now studying the 4th section, which is the means of moksha. And the text ends with a conclusion in the 65th verse. So the introduction was a benediction to his guru, Namaha, as we see that. And in the 2nd verse, he gave the Anubandha Chatustaya in the form of who is fit adhikari, what is the Vishaya Prayojana, and so on. In the 2nd section, which is Jivatma Paramatma Aikya, Swamy Vidyaranya attempted, or he proved, that using our day-to-day experiences, each one of us can see for ourselves that our core essence is one of Satchit Ananda. So in the 10th verse, it was said that while Jiva is Satchit Ananda, Swamiji will prove through our day-to-day experiences, but that Paramatma is also so, and therefore there is an Aikyam, is a revelation from in Vedanta. So how did he prove that Jiva is of the form of Satchit Ananda? So he took Avastatrayam, the Jagrat, Swapna, and thereby the 3 avasthas. And in each of the avasthas, the point being made here is that I may feel that I'm having distinct, varied experiences, but continuous, unchanging, one consciousness alone appears as many experiences. So I may have an experience of a light or a laptop or a car. Each of these are nothing but one continuous, unchanging consciousness which is appearing in those different experiences. So in this way, he showed to us that the inner essence of each one of us is of the form of Chit or consciousness, which is the unchanging consciousness we talked about. Then he extended that not just in the three avasthas, but in masa, abda, yuga, kalpeshu as well. The same unchanging consciousness continues. So therefore, he proved that each one of us are not just of the nature of Chit, but we are Sat as well. Then a rule was applied that what gives most happiness one loves most. Do each one of us not love ourselves the most? So therefore, by this rule, we are the source of the greatest ananda for each one of us. Therefore, our essence is not just of the nature of Chit and Sat, but Ananda as well. So in this manner, through our day-to-day experiences, in the second section, Swamy Vidyaranya proves that each of one of us are of the nature of Satchit Ananda. And then, therefore, there should not have been any problem. All of us should have been liberated. But despite day-to-day experiences showing us that we are of the nature of Satchit Ananda, we still don't reap the benefit. So in this section, he starts off by saying that this is a particular problem of partial knowledge and partial ignorance. And he defines this as an obstruction, as asti bhati vyavahara becoming na asti na asti na bhati vyavahara. And he goes on to elaborate what is the cause of this ignorance. Anadi avidya eva vyamoha eka nibandhanam. So he now is saying that this ignorance is because of Anadi avidya. What is this avidya? In the 15th verse, we saw sa, referring to that Anadi avidya is Prakriti. Now that ignorance is gradually being equated to matter principle. And in the same key shloka, it was said that this matter was of the form of Trigunatmika. It is Sattva, Rajas, and Tamoguna. And it was also pointed out that this Prakriti has the ability to reflect Brahma Pratibimba Samanvita. And because ignorance has been equated to matter, therefore he has to now bring in the topic of Srishti or creation of matter. And we will see that the shlokas goes through three stages of Srishti. Stage 1, which is Karana, and stage 2 in the subsequent slide being Sukshma and Stula Srishti. So we said that Prakriti is Trigunatmika. So there are three broad areas in this Prakriti. One of them is endowed with Sattva Guna, another Rajas, and another Tamas. Because of the difference in the Prakriti, the reflection of Brahman, who is everywhere, which obtains in each of these large areas, has differences. So in the middle, we see that part which is Shuddha Sattva or endowed with majority of Sattva Guna is called Ishvara. He is omniscient. He is of the nature of effulgent, illuminous, golden. These are the words that are described in the text. And he is aware of that original consciousness, and he is aware that he is not the reflection in the medium. Therefore, he is master of Prakriti or Maya, and his life is a Leela, and he is able to do Srishti, Sthiti, and Laya. But when that reflection of Brahman obtains in the second Prakriti, which is dominated by Rajas, it is called as Malina Sattva. And now there is partial knowledge and partial ignorance causing samsara. A third reflection takes in that part of Prakriti which is predominantly tamas. And that again has got full ignorance, and that is Jagat. Subsequently, the shlokas go on to say how the Karana Shrishti evolves into Sukshma Shrishti. We can see that there are 17 components. These various shlokas describe what are the 17 components. And then the Shrishti moves on to the third stage, which is Stula Shrishti. We saw in the earlier classes Panchikaroti Bhagavan and how there is the Stula Sharira coming about, and the Stula Prapancha, which is comprising of the sense objects which are brought in for the enjoyment of the Stula Sharira. This section ends with a rather graphic description of this Jiva who is in samsara. So we are compared to Kitaha, which are there in Nadyam in a river. Avartat avartantaram asu. Asu means quickly or rapidly. This Kitaha, the Jiva, is going from one whirlpool to another whirlpool of samsara. And janma janmana labante. So there is birth after birth. So that is the lot of the Jiva. Then comes the section which is now describing how to get out of the samsara. And Swamiji divides this portion into Shravanam till 48th verse, and then 4 verses on Mananam, and several verses on Nididhyasanam, where we are today. So this portion where the Jiva is like a Kita stuck in samsara, by himself he will not be able to rescue, as is shown in the 31st verse. So Guru in the form of a Karunanidhi, Uddharta, he lifts up the Kita from the whirlpool of samsara. And when does one get a Guru, or when does this happen? That is given by the term Sat Karma Paripakat, when enough Punya Karma is generated. When then one turns inwards, then there is the grace of Guru, and this happens. How does Guru does lifting up Uddharta? So that is given in the 32nd shloka as Panchakosha Vivekena Avapya Upadesham Labante Nivartim Param. So the way, the methodology the Guru adopts to lift up is Panchakosha. And it's not that he does the Panchakosha for us. He gives the Upadesham, and with that Upadesham, each of us do Vedanta Vichara, which is in the form of Panchakosha Viveka. Several verses 33 to 36 describe what are the Panchakoshas. And the shlokas from 37 to 41 describe the actual method of Panchakosha Viveka. So Swamiji presents Anvaya Vratireka Prakriya as a method for doing Panchakosha Viveka. So Pujya Swami Paramarthanandaji points out that in different texts, the Anvaya Vratireka may have a different context. Like earlier, we have seen the Anvaya Vratireka as being used as a rule of co-presence and co-absence. Whereas here in this text, the context for Anvaya Vratireka that is used is Anuvritti and Vyavritti. So you're looking for a continued presence of something, and which is Anuvritti, against Vyavritti, where there is no continued presence, or there is presence which is in between, in bits and pieces. So the point being made is that if there is a causal relationship between two entities, or if there is Swabhavika Dharma rather than Agantika Dharma, or to put in other words, if there is an intrinsic relationship between two entities, then there must be continued presence of both. Whereas if it is incidental presence, if it is coming and going, it is unlikely that the two entities have any relation to each other. So to see if there is any relation between the Stula Sharira and consciousness, the Swapna Avastha was taken, and it was shown that the presence of Atma is Anvaya, whereas the absence of Stula Sharira in Swapna is Vyatireka. So with that, the association of Stula Sharira to Atma is demolished. In the same manner, to check the association of Sukshma Sharira to Atma, the Sushupti Avastha was chosen. And there we see that there is continued presence of Atma, whereas the Sukshma Sharira is no longer there. So that association is also gone. And something very unique about this text is how the Sambandha between the Karana Sharira and Atma is demolished by Pujya Swamiji. He picks up Samadhi Avastha, and Karana Sharira, the other name for it is Avidya or Ajnana. And in Samadhi, there is continued presence of consciousness, but Ajnana is gone. There is Aham Brahma Asmi Jnana. So therefore, continued presence of Atma is Anvaya, and the absence of Ajnana or Karana Sharira is Vyatireka. Therefore, he demolishes any association between Atma and Karana Sharira. So by the 31st verse through Shravanam, I get it that I am of the nature of Atma, but how do I understand the Aikyam? So I refer to the 10th verse earlier, where Swamiji said that the revelation of Aikyam is a Vedanta, revelation of Vedanta. So that is through another prakriya, which is called as Bhaga Tyaga Lakshana. And through that, in the 44th verse, the true meaning or the lakshartha of Tatpada or the lakshartha of Paramatma was revealed as Brahman after removing the upadhis which are associated with him. And in the 45th verse, the true meaning of the Tvam Padartha Lakshartha was revealed again by negating the upadhis and the true meaning being one of Brahman. So in this way, in the 48th verse, Parajivayoho upadhis, which are Maya and avidya or Vihaya, they are given up. And that reveals Akhandam Satchit Anandam Parabrahma, which is indicated. So in this manner, by the end of Shravanam, through the Panchakosha Viveka by Anvaya Vyatireka, it is shown that we are of the nature of Atma. And through Bhagatyaga Lakshana, it is shown that Paramatma is also of the nature of Satchitananda Atma, and the Aikyam has been brought about. And so Ajnana Nivritti has happened, yet Samshaya Nivritti can be there, which is cleared through the process of Mananam, which is covered in the verses 49 to 52. And it was very nicely covered by Madam. So I'll skip this part. And we now land up to the verses of today, which is also the portion which covers the Nididhyasanam. Over to you, Apeksha Madam, to present this verse.
Hari Om. So we'll move towards Shloka 53. Ittam vakya stada artha anusandhanam shravanam bhavet yuktya sambhavit tattva anusandhanam manantu tataha. So this works talks about Shravana and Mananam. So Shravana is required for listening to the Mahavakya. What is Shravana? Shravana is the process of listening to the teachings of Upanishads, particularly the Mahavakyas that reveals the relationship between Jivatma, Paramatma, Aikya, the oneness of the individual self and the Supreme Self. The key points that are discussed here are through Shravana, the identity between Jiva and Brahman is taught. It involves intellectual engagement, applying the mind to actually get to the correct meaning of the Upanishadic statements and teachings. Since our Upanishads contain diverse teachings, and we have seen that, right? Dvaita, Vishishta Dvaita, the seeker must find the central intent to have the clear meaning. So, what is the object of Shravana? The objective of Shravana is to grasp the primary teaching of Advaita, which is the non-dual unity. Once Shravana is done, then Manana is required. That is reasoned reflection. Manana is the removal of the doubts about the Upanishad teaching through reasoning and logical reflection. So you have to have proper reasoning and logical reflection. The purpose here is a lot of intellectual doubts occur, right? Whenever we hear a teaching, a lot of intellectual doubts occur. So to eliminate these intellectual doubts raised either by oneself or by other philosophical schools. And what is the process? Reasoning is being used to prove that Vedanta is not illogical. Show that apparent contradictions are only misunderstandings. The outcome will be when you have firm intellectual conviction that our Upanishadic truth is logically consistent. Since the intellect keeps generating doubts, new doubts, in fact, I should say, repeated reflection is essential. So, Shravana and Manana is very much required. But then, still, even after learning about the knowledge, then doing the reasoning part also, the mind gains clarity and the doubts are removed. but it still does not have the direct experiential assimilation. You cannot experience, right? You cannot think about it and use it in your daily life. So for that, in the upcoming verses, we'll talk about Nididhyasana, which is the practice of deep meditation and contemplation on the truth realized through Sravana and Manana. Hari Om, sir.
Thank you, madam, for that presentation. Now, let's try to unpack this verse. So this verse is the beginning of the Nididhyasanam portion, as Swamiji has put it. But it is covering certain basics, preceded by Nididhyasanam, Shravanam, and Mananam. So Swamy Vidyaranya is taking this occasion to define what is Shravanam and what is Mananam. So in this, the subject verb construct is tadartha anusadhanam shravanam bhavet. So anusadhanam is a kind of reflection, is a kind of absorption on what? Artha. So it is written tadartha anusadhanam. Anusadhanam is reflection or absorption on artha. Artha of what? That is given by the term tad. And what is tad? We saw in the foregone verses what is tvam padartha lakshartha. And tvam pada lakshartha, as we saw, was through bhagatyaga lakshana, was Brahman. And bhagatyaga lakshanam is given in the Mahavakya. So tadartha anusadanam is nothing but thinking about or remembering Brahman through Mahavakyas. That is what is Shravanam. That is what the first line says. And the second line, the subject verb construct is sambhavita tva anusadanam mananam bhavet. Sambhavita means what has been made probable or what has been established. Through what it has been established? Yuktya sambhavita tva. So reflection upon what has been established in the Shravanam part through yukti, through the instrument of reasoning. That is Mananam. So Mahavakya Janita Jnana is Shravanam, whereas Yukti Janita Nishchaya is Mananam. So this is the definition that Swamiji gives about Shravanam and Mananam. Now we'll go to the definition of Nididhyasanam. Over to you, sir.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. We dealt with verse number 53, wherein Swamy Vidyaranya gave the definition of Shravanam and Mananam. We are now in the topic of Nididhyasanam from the verse number 54 onwards. Now, whenever we undergo a study of scriptures, the Vidyaranya has already pointed out what constitutes Shravanam and what constitutes Mananam. When we do the study of scriptures through the Shravanam and Mananam, we should get the knowledge. And the scriptures mention about the benefits of the knowledge that we receive through this technique. So because of that, the samsara is gone, the emotional upheavals are gone, and that is what is known as moksha or liberation from samsara. Now, this is promised by the scriptures, and Swami Paramarthananda quotes many verses regarding the benefit that is one gets by acquiring the knowledge. However, it's also mentioned that not all people exhibit the qualities of a liberated person, that is Sthira Prajna, which was mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. So we have the knowledge, but still we don't reap the benefit of that knowledge, but our samsara, emotional upheavals continues. The question is, where is the problem? How did it happen? Swami Paramarthananda says that it is due to the student himself, deficiency or fault in the student and not with the scriptures. Ideally, a person to come to Vedanta should have undergone certain preparations, and those preparations are detailed in Tattva Bodha as Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampatti. A person who goes through Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampatti is an adhikari who is qualified to study the scriptures, that is to go through the Vedanta. So Shravanam and Mananam then subsequently leads to the generation of knowledge. Now such a person, when he goes through Shravanam and Manana, he instantly gets the benefit of the knowledge. So Nididhyasanam is not meant for those who are adhikaris. Nididhyasanam is meant for those people who are not qualified, but still they underwent the Shravanam and Mananam, and it generated the knowledge, but the knowledge was not useful to them. So what will be their fate? Swami Paramarthika says these people should go through what is known as Nididhyasanam after the Shravanam and Mananam. So the appropriate sequence should have been the practice of sadhana chatushtaya sampatti initially, and then go through Shravanam and Mananam. Go back to the previous slide. Okay, so Shravanam and Mananam by adhikari will generate what is known as direct knowledge, that is aparoksha jnanam, which will be labeled later on by Swamy Vidyaranya in the future verses. Now this is also called as a doubtless knowledge or nissamshaya jnanam. Swami Shankarananda says that it gives a different name that's called samyak darshanam or clear vision, or it can also be called as sthira prajna. Now, if a person straight away goes through Shravanam and Mananam without practicing sadhana chatushtaya sampatti, he gets the knowledge, no doubt, but that knowledge is called as indirect knowledge, and Swami Vidyaranya calls it as paroksha jnanam. It's also called as unripe knowledge because it is of no use to that person. And such a person, Swami Paramarthananda, he calls that knowledge as sapratibandhaka knowledge, or the knowledge is obstructed, which is not giving us any benefit. So how to make it paroksha to aparoksha jnana? So that is what is given here as Shravanam initially, Mananam, and then he should undergo what is known as Nididhyasanam, what we are dealing with the subsequent verses now. So we'll go to the verse number 54. Tabhyam nirvichikitserthe chetasa sthapitasya yat ekatanatvametadhi nididhyasanamuchyate. He says tabhyam. By these two methods, what he mentioned earlier, that is Shravanam and Mananam, a person should get what is known as doubtless knowledge, that is nirvichikitse arthe. The meaning of the Mahavakya is he doesn't have any doubt with that. And when that happens, doubtless knowledge, thereafter, the yat chetasaha, thereafter the mind, sthapitasya, is established in the meaning of that artha, that is meaning of the Mahavakya. Next slide, please. Next slide. So, he says the ekatanatva. Ekatanatva refers to single pointedness. So, without any break, it's a single thread. Now, when I'm going through this meditation or Vedantic meditation, my thoughts are single pointed, that is directed towards the AHAM BRAHMA ASMI or the Mahavakya. And this is continuous without any break. No other thoughts can occur in this. This is how the meditation should be done. That's what is being described by Swami Vidyaranya here in this verse. So it should be ekatanatvam. And when that happens, etadhi, this indeed is Nididhyasanam uchyate. He calls it as Nididhyasanam. There are many ways apart from the Vedantic meditation to conduct the Nididhyasanam. And those can be satsanga, attending the classes by the people who are jnanis and listening to them repeatedly. It could be an alert reading, alert way of living a life, what is mentioned in the scriptures, and it could be sharing and teaching Vedanta itself, and even an imitation of jnani would constitute what is known as Nididhyasanam. So in verse number 54, what we saw was that Vedantic meditation that will also help in Nididhyasanam. This meditation will not give us any knowledge. The knowledge comes only through Shravanam and Mananam, but From Paroksha Jnanam to Aparoksha Jnanam, one has to go through what is known as Nididhyasanam in various ways of doing, till we become Aparoksha Jnanis. Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you, Sanjay sir. Let's try to unpack this verse. So we saw that this verse is defining Nididhyasanam, and we can either look at this as a yat etat correlative construct, or we can try to look at it as one sentence also. Yat etat ekatanatvam. So this is in the subjective case, and ekatanatvam, as we have heard sir say, is a focused mind or single pointedness. But in the text, Swamiji points that Tana is a thread, and Ekatanatvam is like a single thread, unbroken continuity. That's what. So, Yat Etat Ekatanatvam. So, this Ekatanatvam belonging to whom? Then you will get Chetasaha and Sthapitasya Chetasaha in the sixth case. So, Ekatanatvam belonging to the established mind. Then you ask the question, from what is this Ekatanatvam come? Then you will get Thabhyam in the third case. Thabhyam, as sir mentioned, is that Ekatanatvam of the established mind, which is brought about by Shravanam and Mananam. That is, the Thabhyam is the reference to the earlier words. And then we ask the question, that kind of Ekatanatvam in what? Then you get the Nirvichitse Arthe in the seventh case. Nirvichikitse refers to undoubted, and Artha, as pointed out, is the Tatparya of Shravanam, which is Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam, or as we saw earlier, the Tatpadartha and Tvampadartha Lakshartha. So, Ekatanatvam, that unbroken, continued state of established mind, established so by Shravanam and Mananam, in the Vedanta Tatparya, which is undoubted. Nididhyasanam Uchyate. So that is what is called as Nididhyasanam. And this and the next verse makes a distinction between Nididhyasanam and Samadhi. So the next verse defines Samadhi. This is important to know because, as we saw in Sanjay sir's last slide, Swamiji has said that Nididhyasanam doesn't mean that you are sitting in a quiet room, closed and in Padmasana and doing. So that is more of the process of Samadhi. Whereas Nididhyasanam is Ekatanatvam, and that Ekatanatvam could be in Satsanga. It could be when you're doing, like sir said, alert living, as long as you are very clear about Brahma Satyam and Jagan Mithya and whatever we are doing. Then we are in Nididhyasanam. Then we are meditative, whatever we may be doing. Whereas Samadhi is more specifically sitting in a particular manner as described by Patanjali Yoga Sutra in Ashtanga Yoga, and then trying to do that Ekatanatvam. We now go to the next shloka. Over to you, Sachin.
Hari Om, Om Gurubhyo Namaha. So, this shloka, Dhyatru Dhyane Parityajya Kramadheye Kagocharam Nirvat Deepavachittam Samadhir Vidyate. As we see in the next slide, let's begin with something familiar to us. Whether you are painting, listening to music, or immersed in spiritual practices, there is a moment when the mind becomes completely absorbed. This absorption is not mystical. It's a natural faculty of the mind. Yoga calls this Samadhi, but it's not reserved for sages or seekers. It's simply the mind doing what it does best when it loves something deeply. As we see in this slide, which talks about the misconception of Samadhi. Samadhi is often misunderstood as a rare or exalted state, but in truth, it's a quiet, ordinary. When you are fully engaged in a class as you are enjoying, you are in samadhi. It's not about renouncing the world, it's about being so present that the world fades into the background. Absorption is samadhi, and it's available to all of us all the time. We see the next slide where philosophy of this is explained. Yoga philosophy distinguishes between two aspects of cognition: pramana, the thought, and prameya, the object. When I look at a table, the table exists outside, but the thought of the table arises inside. This clear distinction helps us understand how the mind relates to the world and sets the stage for deeper inquiry into what happens when that boundary dissolves. One more small example, as we see in the next slide. Let's explore through a dream. Suppose you think of a diseased person before sleep. In your dream, they appear and you interact with them. Are they an object or a thought? Clearly, they are a thought because the object no longer exists. Yet, the mind gives them such vividness that they feel real. This is the power of absorption. In the next slide, we see what happens when thought fuses with the dream. In the deep absorption, the boundaries between thought and object begins to blur. You no longer recognize the person in the dream as a thought. The thoughtless is lost and the object appears independently real. This fusion is the hallmark of samadhi, where the mind becomes so absorbed that it forgets itself. We go to the next slide which explains the dhyana and the dream. This same dynamic plays out in meditation. As you focus on an object, the process of meditation fades. The meditator is forgotten. Only the object remains. Just like in a dream where you don't remember you are dreaming, in samadhi process, this process and the self dissolves into pure experience. Impact of absorption, as you see in the next slide. Think of a dream tiger. It can frighten you, even though it's not real. That's the mind's power. When you are fully absorbed, the impact is profound. Similarly, when the thought AHAM BRAHMA ASMI, I am Brahman, arises in samadhi, it's not just an idea, it becomes a lived reality. This is Nirvikalpaka Samadhi, where the division between the subject and object disappears. Let us see more in details about Nirvikalpaka Samadhi in the next slide. In the Nirvikalpaka Samadhi, the thought continues without efforts. Willpower is no longer needed. The vritti, the mental movement, gains momentum. The vritti, the mental movement, gains momentum. The Gita gives a beautiful metaphor of flame in a windless space. Just as the flame remains steady, so does the mind in samadhi. Now, in the second last slide, are there thoughts in samadhi? This is a big question. Now, a subtle question arises: are there thoughts in samadhi? Vidyaranya says yes, but they are not deliberately entertained. Since the will is absent, we don't feel them. These are sukshma vrittis, subtle thoughts that exist without our awareness. They are present but unrecognized. In the last slide, even in deep sleep, we say, I slept well. That comfort is subtle thought. In samadhi too, sukshma vritti exists. We don't notice them at the time, but we recollect them later. This recollection is proof that they were there. The mind collects impressions even when the ego and will are silent. To conclude, in the next slide, absorption is familiar. Your absorption is a natural process. Samadhi is not a mystical escape, it's a deep engagement. As thought and object fuse, the meditator dissolves, subtle impressions remain, shaping our experiences, whether in dream, sleep, or meditation. the mind reveals its profound capacity to create reality through absorptions. Hari Om. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sachin, for the wonderful slides. Why is there a separate verse, and how is Samadhi different from Nididhyasanam, which we saw earlier? So we saw Nididhyasanam being defined as Ekatanatvam. So there is there is effort involved to constantly be aware of that one reality, the substratum behind whatever is happening in front of me. Whereas in Samadhi, there is a deliberate attempt to make this more impactful, as Sachin showed, that the Samadhi, the impact of what you are focusing on is much greater over the mind as compared to Ekatanatvam, which is Nididhyasanam. So therefore, Swamy Vidyaranya is specifically suggesting us to practice this form of Nididhyasanam, where you allot particular time in the day and you go through the process of Ashtanga Yoga, or the steps described in the 6th chapter of Gita. And when the subject and the instrument, they dissolve and only the object remains, then it is more impactful. And then we are then able to practice Ekatanatvam at other times more effortlessly. So that is the reason that this is given separately here. So Abhidhiyate is designated, is called, that is the verb here. And Nirvat Deepavat Chittam. So that mind, which is like a flame kept in an area where there is no wind, that type of mind. And Kramad Dheya Ekagocharam, and in a graded manner, that mind which has now focused on one thought, in this case being Vedantic meditation, it is about Atma as being Satya, Atma as being Asanga. This is Sajatiya Pratyaya Pravaha. So it need not be just repetition of one word, but it is repetition of that idea that Brahman is Satyam and everything else is Mithya in whatever form. And there is a subclause added by the secondary verb, which is Parityajya, having given away Dhyatr and Dhyana. So there is subject, instrument, object in most of what we do. And here in Samadhi, the subject and the instrument have faded away into the background, and only that object of meditation remains. And this is what is Samadhi Abhidhiyate. This is the verse. Now, over to you, Ashwini Madam, to answer the question which Sachin has already introduced, whether Samadhi is a thoughtless state or there are thoughts.
Yes. Yes, sir. Thank you. Hari Om. So verse 56 is tracing the Brahmakara Vritti. Vrittayastu tadanim gnata apyatma gocharaha smaranadhanumiyante vyuttitasya samuttitat. Smaranadhanumiyante. That is the key word here. So Atma Gochara, like Atma Gochara Vrittis here means they are Sukshma Vrittis. Yes, sir. Please, next slide. So these Vrittis, they deal with Atma or Chidananda Rupa, Satchidananda Rupa. Now, if we remember in the verse 5, the inference of subtle thoughts recollected after sleep state can be used here too. Only thing is, in Sushupti Avastha, it is Ajnana Gochara, and here it is Aham Brahma Asmi Gochara Vritti. Now, it's noticed at the time of Samadhi. You can infer based on the latter memory. Now, after the person comes out of meditation or Nirvikalpaka Samadhi and recollects that he or she was absorbed in Vedantic thought, from the recollection happening later, one can infer that he or she had thoughts in Samadhi Avastha, like Sushupti Avastha. If they are able to recollect now, then they must have had that vritti during Nirvikalpa Samadhi. See, now samadhi does not necessarily mean a sudden, abrupt merger into the absolute. It takes place gradually. This is seen described in the sutras of Patanjali. There are 5 or 6 stages or degrees of samadhi, and in the earlier stages of samadhi, one does not actually merge with the absolute. Due to the predominance of cosmic sattva guna in the mind of the meditator, there is an experience of universality. But after all, sattva guna also is only a guna. It is a property of Prakriti. So long as we are involved in the qualities of Prakriti, we have not totally merged with the absolute. It is like seeing absolute through a clean glass. We are seeing the total universe through a transparent medium. We are seeing it, of course. It is as good as being it. Yet there is a glass pane, as it were, preventing us from actually merging with it. In the next slide. Therefore, after this kind of samadhi, where the experience is through the sattva guna of Prakriti, there is a rising up from samadhi. It is called utthana. So we won't be able to merge and we wake up due to the stirring of sattva caused by the rajas Prakriti, which is also there submerged. In deep samadhi, the powerful universal sattva drives down the impulses of rajas and tamas. But will they remain inside forever? No. They will be in ambush and slowly create a disturbance which causes the awakening of the person from samadhi. And that person remembers he or she was in the state of samadhi. The next slide. Smarana danu miyante. In the state of actual samadhi, there is no thought process. In turn, there should not be any remembrance too. But for example, some of us are awake now, but we don't go on remembering and thinking that we are awake. It is part of our nature. And so we need not think of it. Similarly, there is no thought in samadhi, no conscious operation of mind. But when we wake up from samadhi, we will have a memory of it. The memory is caused by the presence of mind in the state of sattva. If the mind were not there at all, absolutely there would be no coming up. We would have attained absolute liberation. That will be videha mukti. But the sattva guna persists in the lower kind of samadhi, which is known as savikalpa or sampragnata, as a case may be known as, the awakening that is caused by the rajas principle, and the memory of having had the experience of samadhi is caused by the sattva quality of prakriti, which was the means or medium through which samadhi was experienced. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam. So as madam explained, the common belief is that in deep sleep and in samadhi, there is no will. So therefore, the doubt whether there are any thoughts in both the places. This argument was used, as madam said, in the 5th verse, where the intent was to say that in all distinct, varied experiences, one continuous, changeless consciousness alone appears as many experiences. That was the intent. And there it was said that in Shushupti also, there are experiences or thoughts. And there the intent was, those are also one continuous, unchanging consciousness and nothing apart from it. But here we are talking about making the ekatanatvam, which was used in the Nididhyasanam definition verse, to how to make it more impactful. So for that, samadhi was advised by Swamy Vidyaranya. And here Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya type of thoughts used as Sajatiya Pratyaya Pravaha are done initially with effort, which is dharana, and gradually without effort, which is dhyana. And then finally, there is the meditator instrument meditated distinction disappears, and that thought alone remains. And that is what is samadhi. So to unpack this verse, the verb is anumiyante, which means are inferred. So what is inferred? When you get the first case, vrityayaha, thoughts are inferred. that is elaborated by Tadanim Ajanata Api. At that time, they are not known. That type of thoughts are inferred. But Api, however, Atma Gocharaha. So thoughts which are not known at that time, yet they are in the scope of one's awareness. That is what Sachin explained as Sukshma Vritti. In the absence of the will, the presence of those thoughts are called as Sukshma Vritti. So that is why here he is saying Tadanim Ajanata Api Atma Gochara. So although they are not known at that time, they are in the scope of one's awareness as Sukshma Vritti. So those are inferred, Anumiyante. When are they inferred? Or from what are they inferred? When you ask, you get in the fifth case, Smaranat Samuttitat. They are inferred from remembrance, from the process of waking. Whose remembrance? Who is waking up? Then you get the sixth case, Vyattitasya, of the person who has woken up. So to put it together, thoughts which are not known at that time, which are yet in the scope of one's awareness, they are inferred as a memory from the process of waking of the person who has woken up. So this shows that there are thoughts at the time of Samadhi, because later when the person wakes up, he infers that there was AHAM BRAHMA ASMI thought, to show that they were there in Samadhi as well.
Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. This session we saw very, very important verses touching on various aspects, covering from the difference between the Nididhyasanam and the Samadhi, and within the Samadhi, the differences of what is Savikalpa and Nirvikalpa. So, and then prior to that, about the sadhanas also. Who is the Nididhyasanam meant for, etc. Let's go through some of these questions. We may not have touched on all these things in the class, but they're all applicable and you should be able to answer them if you are attentive in the class. Okay, here is the first question. Ashwini will answer these questions. Amongst the six topics of, we'll go back to the question, 6 topics of Vedanta, what is the most relevant topic for practical application of the knowledge? So all these topics are touched upon and covered in the Panchadashi. What is that which is practically very useful and very important for us to do? Number 1, is it Brahman, the reality? Is it Jagat, the world? Is it Jiva, the individual? Is it Moksha, the liberation? Or is it the sadhana, the means to attain the moksha? Or is it dharma, how to lead our life?
Yeah, I had a bit of hint there. The sadhana means to attain moksha.
Right, that is the right answer. Sadhana is the most practical. Of course, all of them are important only, all of them are interconnected only. But that which is practically very useful and that we have to really put in a lot of effort is the aspect of sadhana, the means to attain moksha. And Dr. Sanjay also touched upon them. Those who haven't had this sadhana, the sadhana chatushtaya sampatti, for them, the Nididhyasanam is prescribed more, they must adhere to that more sincerely. But those who is a adhikari, those who is a sadhana chatushtaya sampanna, the liberation is just like how the cucumber snaps from its parent plant. Next question, please. Now, in this picture, we see how the sadhana is described. Now, if the body of the entire Vedanta, not only Panchadashi, entire Vedanta is the Brahman, Jiva, Jagat, and Moksha. Of course, it is the Brahman, awareness and living the knowledge of Brahman is what one gets as moksha. So if that is the body of the human being, if you compare it to a human being, it is the sadhana which are the limbs. So where it is the hands-on really. But the path you need to lead your life, what is that you walk on, is the dharma. So the legs are compared to the dharma. Sadhana is the hands, the entire body itself, including all organs, is the rest of the topics. Next question. From what source has Swamy Vidyaranya has bodily lifted the verses 53 to 56 and then these portions that we have covered today, 59 to 62? Is it Kathopanishad? Is it Bhagavad Gita? Is it from Sadhana Panchakam or is it Adhyatma Upanishad?
It is from Adhyatma Upanishad.
And that is the right answer. Adhyatma Upanishad is also called as Turiyatita Avadhuta Upanishad, and that is from the Shukla Yajurveda. So Yajurveda, as you know, has Krishna Yajurveda and Shukla Yajurveda. Shukla Yajurveda also has Ishavasya and Brihadaranyaka. So Shukla Yajurveda, so Adhyatma Upanishad is there in that one. Okay, next question. Gnana Yoga Sadhana, as we know, has Shravanam. And that can be again compared to, these are the similes which are very nice and easy to understand, and thanks to Chinmaya Mission for providing these similes. Guru Bhaktananda has given wonderful similes and metaphors for us to understand. Shravanam can be compared to obtaining the food. That is the knowledge of the self from the Gurus and Shastras. Mananam is chewing and trying to relish the food. Nididhyasanam is digesting the food to get the nourishment to every cell. And Samadhi is the effect of it. What effect do you get out of it? Of course, Nididhyasanam by itself can get, there will be some variations in the way it is described, but this is one way of knowing. Samadhi is the sparkling health one enjoys after digesting the food of, like Nididhyasanam, like a Sthita Prajna and how they conduct. Next slide. In the verse 53, that was covered beautifully. What is the end point of the process of Shravanam? This covers Shravanam and Mananam. What is the end point of process of Shravanam? Is it Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampatti? Or is it Brahma Gnanam the Tat Pada Vichara? Is it Jivatma Paramatma Aikya Vichara? Or is it the Karma Yoga?
It is Jivatma Paramatma Aikya Vichara.
Yeah, that is the right answer. That is there in the first line, aided by the Mahavakyas. So we will see the answer. So that is the right answer. So by the time one gets the knowledge of Jivatma Paramatma Aikya Vichara, in a way, that is the end of Shravanam. Of course, we get a lot of doubts, and that is something which is cleared through Mananam. Next question. What is true regarding Mananam? Mananam helps in Manas Niyantrana. That is removal of the obstacles in the mind to make the mind become more peaceful. Restlessness, which is also called as Vikshepa, is removed. Number 2, unlike Shravanam, for Mananam, Guru's help is not required. Number 3, Mananam is essential for Shravanam and later for Nididhyasanam to be effective. Number 4, Mananam is feeling at the emotional level of the knowledge gained through Shravanam. Bit of a trick question.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I think Mananam is essential for Shravanam, and with that later the Nididhyasanam will be effective.
That is true. So Vikshepa, in order to remove Vikshepa, we need Upasana Yoga. So we have the impurities in the mind that is dealt with the Karma Yoga, Malam, Vikshepa through Upasana, and Avarana, the Ajnanam through Gnana Yoga. Now part of the Gnana Yoga is Mananam. And you cannot have Shravanam without Mananam and vice versa. So Shravanam is something which continues through this process. Mananam is what is really anchors the Shravanam and the Nididhyasanam also. 3 is the right answer. We will see that. We'll move on to the next question. This verse is about the Nididhyasanam. In this verse, the firm and undoubted conviction of the self-knowledge is mentioned. Where does this conviction happen? So where does the conviction of this knowledge happen? Is it at the level of consciousness, which is Brahman? Is it at the level of Karana Sharira, the Annamaya Kosha or the bliss sheet? Or is it at the level of Vijnanamaya Kosha, the intellectual sheet? Or is it at the level of emotional and thought level, which is the Manomaya Kosha?
It is at the intellectual level, I think.
That is true. So all the Brahma Gnanam, all the conviction, everything happens at the intellectual level only. Therefore, one has to have the proper Viveka. We'll see the answer. So Viveka happens at the intellectual level. Therefore, the conviction also happens at the intellectual level. So obviously it is not Brahman, because Brahman itself, there are no attributes to it. And yeah, so we'll move on to the next question, the 54. Ekatanatvam is constantly dwelling on the Aham Brahmasmi thought. This is also called as Brahmakara Rakandakara Vritti. The biggest obstacle for the Ekatanatvam is Viparita Bhavana. What is Viparita Bhavana? Is it the conditioned thought that I am the body-mind identity? Or is it the deep-rooted vasanas causing kashaya, which is the mental disturbances while doing Vedantic meditation? Or is it the severe emotional afflictions that we all go through during day-to-day sufferings in the ephemeral world? Or is it getting too addicted to Vedantic meditation and feeling very contented with the process rather than the content of it, which is also called as rasaswada?
Yeah, I think this is a conditioned thoughts that I am body mind identity.
That is the Mula Avidya, the ignorance that we all have, which is much more deep rooted than anything else, and that is the right answer. That is the Viparita Bhavana. Next question. What is the difference between Savikalpa Samadhi and Nirvikalpaka Samadhi? We have seen this here. So I've mentioned it as SS and NS. SS, Savikalpaka Samadhi, is meditating on Savikara Ishvara, one with attributes, whereas Nirvikalpaka Samadhi is meditating on the Nirvikara Brahman. Or is it SS is done prior to Shravanam as Upasana, whereas NS is a part of Jnana Yoga? Or is it Savikalpak Samadhi is intermittent anchoring to Aham Brahmasmi Jnanam by deliberately working on the Viparita Bhavana, whereas Nirvikalpaka Samadhi is effortless constant act of abidance, as if like a thread which is continuous on the Aham Brahmasmi? Or is it number 4, all of the above?
I want to say all of the above.
That is not the right answer. We will see. It is number 3. We will see the answer. So Savikalpaka, Samadhi, it was beautifully explained in the class. It is the intermittent abidance to the Gnanam. So once somebody is sitting for the meditation, they are not able to continuously, streamline their thoughts, and it's effortfully trying to work on the Viparita Bhavana. That is a Savikalpaka Samadhi, whereas Nirvikalpaka is effortless like a thread, and there is no obstacles there. Next question. Triputi is mentioned here in this verse. That was also mentioned beautifully by Dr. Sundar. In this process of progression from Savikalpa Samadhi to Nirvikalpa Samadhi, there is dissolution of 2 of the 3. So what are the 3 things? One is the meditator. The second is the meditator is Dhyatru or Dhyata. Dhyata is the male. Dhyatru is the male and Dhyata is the female. And Dhyana, which is the process of meditation, and Dhyaya is the object of meditation. These 3 are there. 2 will get dissolved in this process of transfer or going to the Nirvikalpaka Samadhi. So what remains?
Yeah, so the only object of meditation remains, that is Dhyaya.
That is right. When the thoughts are so streamlined and person is fully anchored into the single thought, our ego is dissolved. When the ego is dissolved, obviously the Dhyatru or Dhyata, the meditator, is gone. When the meditator is gone, the process of meditation is also gone. What remains is the absolute, which is the Dhyaya, which is nothing but the Brahman or the Akandakara Vritti or Brahmakara Vritti. Okay. So in this verse, mind is steady like a flame in a breezeless place. What is the state of experience of the mind like?
Yeah.
So this is there in the 3rd line. Is it pure sattvic awareness, or is it more of sattva and a trace of rajoguna, or is it a combination of SRT or is it gunatita, beyond all the gunas?
It is by sattva. It is pure sattvic awareness.
Yeah, that is the right answer. We shouldn't get confused here. The question is the state of experience of the mind. So if you think it is gunatita, gunatita has no experience. Gunatita is beyond all the attributes. So therefore, here the answer is experience of the mind is the pure sattvic awareness. Next slide. Okay, Brahmakara vritti or the Akhandakara vritti is extremely subtle. It is sushukshmam. Then why not just say nothingness, or why not just say just deny it altogether, saying it does not exist at all? And this is a question from a Purvapakshi. Purvapakshi is the one who is challenging all this, of course. So how is this question answered in this verse? Because Vedas state that this is the fact, because we use Shastra Pramana. You remember there are 6 Pramanas. So Shastra Pramana is used, therefore it must be true. Or is it because there is no difference between the pure nothingness and pure everythingness or the consciousness? Or is it because although Brahmakara vritti is subtle, it is experienced like space? Okay. Number 4, is it because there is recollection of samadhi state after one comes out of it, just like Sushupti?
Yes, there is a recollection. So the answer is fourth one.
That is the right answer. So we have seen that even in the Dakshinamurti Stotra, Pragaswapsamedeh Prabodha Samaye Yef Pratyabhignayate. So which is when you wake up from the sleep, even when we were in deep sleep, we were not aware of it, but after waking up, we know, but there was something there to remember. So just like that, the recollection of samadhi state also. So that is effortfully going to Sushupti in a way. After one comes out of the samadhi state, just like the experience of the deep sleep, one remembers on waking up. So that is the example given here to challenge this Purvapakshi's question. Dhanyavada. Hari Om. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Divakar and Ashwini, for the nice quiz.
We have come to end of today's satsanga, which has enriched our spiritual learning about the nuances of Nididhyasanam and Samadhi and the various preconditions and possibilities. Nididhyasana is imperative for the much desired shift from the Paroksha to Aparoksha Gnana. Grateful thanks to all the speakers and Dr. Sundar for bringing in a lot of clarity to our understanding and ably giving us a succinct overview of the entire Tattva Viveka chapter. The teaching quiz helped us quickly check our level of absorption of today's verses, and thanks to Dr. Divakar and Dr. Ashwini for facilitating the same. Param Vedanta thanks each one of you for your continued interest in the pursuit of Atma Vidya through our series of sessions and also for your positive feedback. Our next session is on Monday, the 10th of November, for session 18 of Mananam series covering Kathopanishad verses 12 to 15, chapter 2, Valli 1. We conclude today's session with our usual Shanti mantra, and you may please chant along. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum.